Good afternoon. My name is Liesel van der Westhuizen, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the Kaelo March webinar. Today, we are embarking on an exciting journey into the heart of human emotions. And I think nearly all of us have a goal to be happy. When people ask parents what they want for their children, they often respond with, I just want them to be happy, right? But what does it actually mean to be happy? Well, that's exactly why we're here today. And it's my privilege to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Tracy Helps. With her extensive background in psychology and her passion for understanding the complexities of human emotions, Tracy Helps. Her knowledge and her experience will equip us and will guide us to greater well-being. So Tracy, warm welcome to you. Thank you for your time this afternoon. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Liesel, and thanks for having me with you today. Always such a pleasure to be able to present for Kaelo and for your wonderful clients, and also on such a positive and happy topic. So much of my time is spent talking about things that are really difficult, and trauma and grief and loss and all these challenging topics. So it's really wonderful to be able to spend some time talking about the science of happiness. And exactly as you say, this is the ever elusive holy grail, the pursuit of happiness. And how do we actually attain that? How do we actually get there? And amazingly, there is an entire school of psychology, positive psychology is what we call it, that does a lot of research and work in this field. So we do have some pretty good understandings of what happiness actually is and how we can perhaps achieve that. So hopefully today I'll be able to shed some light on some of those understandings. Liesel and my colleagues are going to help me with that chat box. So please go ahead and drop as many questions or experiences or insights. Perhaps even it's a really happy image. So you can see my idea of happiness is a bright yellow sunflower. I'd love to see in that chat box what yours are as well. So please drop your images, your quotes, your questions, your insights, and your shared experiences in that chat box so that we can all learn from each other today as well. All of that said, let's have a look at what we're actually going to talk about. So we're going to discuss what is happiness? What is this thing? How do we actually get there? Where do we find it? Where does it come from? What are some of the blocks that might get in the way of us actually being able to achieve that in a sustainable way? And how do we build a happiness-focused lifestyle so that this becomes a part of our routine and not something we are trying to generate when things feel difficult or when we're not feeling happy? Just to kick it off and to get the ball rolling and to get your minds thinking in this way, I just want to ask you a couple questions. And I'd like you to take a moment to really reflect on these and to give it some thought and think, where are you? Perhaps even write these answers down. If you're feeling brave and transparent, you can go ahead and drop those in the chat box as well. As soon as one of you shares, we will be able to all share and feel a whole lot more comfortable and more trusting to be able to talk to each other and share this morning. So if you're feeling brave, go ahead and drop it in the chat box. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? How happy are you? Are you miserable, depressed, feeling totally awful? That would obviously be a 1. If you are completely ecstatic and loving every minute of your life, that would be a 10. Perhaps you are somewhere in between. Let me know what those numbers are, or just write it down for yourself. It's really important to pause for a moment here and there and reflect on that question. How happy are we? How often do we actually ask ourselves that and just pause? And sometimes we get so caught up, and I am the master of this, in the things that are not right, that we perhaps don't have yet, that are not going well, that we forget to stop and reflect on the things that we do have and that are going well. And when we pause and ask ourselves, how happy are we? It's also an opportunity to reflect on that. And one of the great perspectives on happiness is that it's about being accepting and appreciative of exactly where you are right now. So scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? Perhaps right in this moment.
Tracy, just to give you some insight from the chat box here, we have numbers across from 7, 4, 8. We have a 2, we have a 0 here today. We have a 6, a 4. Thank you so much for the engagement, guys. 9, 6. So, yeah.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Good. I don't see any 1s and 2s, which is a positive start to the day. But obviously, we'd all like to be, an 8 or 9 or a 10. And I guess to expect to live in an 8 or 9 or 10 is probably unrealistic. One of the things we need to understand about happiness is that it's actually an elevated mood. So we obviously have a whole lot of ranges of mood. Your baseline we could possibly call content. As soon as we say we're happy, that's actually an elevated mood. Just like if I say I'm sad, that's a depressed mood. If I'm ecstatic, it's even more elevated. If I'm depressed, that's even more depressed. So happy is actually an elevated mood. We're not going to feel happy all of the time. And that can be an unrealistic expectation that actually gets in the way of us appreciating our contentment or those moments of happiness. It's not in the human experience to always be in an elevated mood, just like it isn't in the human experience or shouldn't be in the human experience to always be in a low mood. We actually just want to be right in the middle there on contentment. So if you're sitting around a 6, 7, you're doing pretty well. And then hopefully we're going to get those moments of 7, 8, 9, and 10 consistently through our days and through our lives. Okay, the next question, which is really important for us to reflect on, is what actually makes you happy? What are the things, what are the aspects of your life that make you happy? Go ahead and drop those answers in the chat box as well. If you feel more comfortable reflecting by yourself, go ahead and do that. I do believe it helps to write these things down, just makes it a whole lot more real for you. But what is it that actually makes you happy? While you do that, I'll offer some insights on this as well. Often we look for the big things, the major life events, and actually it's often a collection of the really small things that make us happy. It's paying attention to the change of seasons and the flowers that are blooming or the leaves that are falling. It's a good meal. It's a win at work. It's the small day-to-day things that make us happy. If we get caught up in looking for the big, momentous events, that's where we often get a little bit stuck. We want to pay attention to the smaller day-to-day things. Okay? That's where we'll find the joy and the happiness. Lisa, anything happening in that chat box?
Let me read some out for you, Trace. We have my family, my kids, my faith, my little sister. We have, sure, thanks, guys. There's a lot of engagement coming through. Running with friends and family, exercising, my cats, music and family, 5 minutes of stillness. Yeah.
Brilliant. Those are great. Those are awesome. Okay, are you still with me?
Yes.
Brilliant. Sorry, I bumped my screen there. I was worried I lost you for a second. Okay, so wonderful people are focusing on those smaller things and not waiting for the big momentous events to bring us that happiness. Okay, this is a big question for me and one that I often ask patients when I'm working with them in a therapy environment. What percentage of your time do you spend doing things that make you truly happy? Is it a lot of time? Is it a little bit of time? When you look at your life, when you review your life, and I would encourage you to be doing that sort of at least annually, but hopefully maybe quarterly, each season of the year, perhaps just sit down for a moment and review your life. What percentage of your time do you spend doing things that make you truly happy? We all have the 10% of, I don't know, washing dishes, sitting in traffic, whatever it is, aspects of our job we don't like. For me, that's definitely the admin. What are the bits of life we have to do, right? That's always going to be there. But the rest of it should be stuff that actually makes us happy. If your percentage is really low, if you're sitting on 10%, 20% of my time makes me happy. The rest is just slog. we're going to have a look at that. You need to make some changes, and those changes might be to lifestyle, they might be to attitude and perception, they might be to relationships. I don't know where those changes are, but if this percentage is not well above 50, we're going to want to make some changes. Lisa, anybody brave enough to drop their answers in the chat box for this one?
Yes, we do have a very brave audience, and I can't see one comment here where someone says that they spend enough time, or, you know, as you said, a score above 50. All of these comments are below 50, not nearly enough, not enough, 15%, not nearly enough. So that gives us a good indication that we need to do some work here, Trace.
Sure. Absolutely. And this is the bit that gets tough, right? Is that we have to take responsibility for that. We have to go, okay, I can see that my score is 40%. I don't want it to be 40%. You know, let's say I live for 100 years. When I get to 100, I'm going to look back and I'm going to go, 60 years of my life, I was miserable. That's not really an acceptable answer for me. I don't want to have that answer when I turn 100. I want to have 80% of my life. 80 years was good and 20 years was hard. And I know that life throws things at us that are challenging and we can't control, and difficult things happen, and I'm not naive to that, obviously. But the bit that's difficult is that we can actually choose. We can choose a happy perspective. And that's really hard. It's really hard. But we can wake up in the morning and we can actually go, regardless of what happens to me today, I'm going to take the optimistic viewpoint. I'm going to take the happiness perspective. And you can actually set the tone for the whole day. So even when difficult things happen, even when catastrophic things happen, your attitude to those things can still and does still determine how happy you actually are. And I mean, this example is used all the time, and I hate to use such a cliche, but I don't have a better one. Often you'll drive through environments in South Africa, around the world, but in South Africa, that are truly, truly awful. I'm talking about your informal settlements and you know, places of dire poverty and struggle. And you'll see kids, and kids haven't learned yet to worry about things, hopefully, necessarily. Some of them, unfortunately, have. And they'll be smiling and laughing and playing and making joy out of nonsense. They'll be throwing rocks at a stack of tin cans, making happiness, making joy out of nothing at all. And you'll drive a couple kilometers and there'll be a big fancy estate with, you know, 8-foot walls and every possible conceivable luxury and gizmo and gadget. And in there are a whole bunch of miserable kids sitting looking at each other because they're bored. Environment and privilege and all of these things don't necessarily define happiness. We do. And that's the good news. It's also the difficult news. Obviously, if your environment is really, really challenging and difficult things have happened or are happening, you might have to work harder at this. But the good news is that it is possible for us to generate that happiness. Now, the question I'd like to ask you is, how much of your time do you spend chasing happiness instead of creating it? Now, what that means is, if I'm chasing it, in my head I'm going, when I make X amount of money per month or per year, when I live in a house with 5 bedrooms, when I drive this car, when I get this promotion, when I get married, when I have kids, when I get divorced, when I lose 20 kilograms, when I travel to 10 countries, when I don't know, whatever, when I finish the Ironman. You know, it's chasing. When I do this, when I do that, when I hit some target, some line, some magical number, then I'll be happy. It doesn't work like that at all, because you buy the house or the car or lose the weight or finish the marathon or get in the relationship or have the kids or whatever it is, and then what? That's a moment in time. I've bought the house, yay, exciting, I'm happy, wonderful. Now I've got to clean it, or I've got to pay the bills for it, or I've got to buy more stuff for it, or I have to maintain it, or no more making me happy. So we can't chase happiness. We actually have to create it. We have to build it. And like I was saying just now, that's often in the small things. It's not in the big moments. It's in the small moments. And the other day, I'll give you an example. My kids like to break my things. They don't break their father's things. They don't break their things. They always seem to break my things. And it's never on purpose. It's genuinely an accident. And they don't mean it. But that just seems to be how the cookie crumbles. Maybe because I have more things around than other people do. Maybe it's just a game of numbers. But nonetheless. So I have this cactus in the bathroom that flowers like once every, I don't know, bazillion years. And every day I've been watching this thing and the flower's been slowly growing. And every time I have a shower in the morning, I'm like, oh, look, the flower, the flower, the flower, the flower. A couple of days ago, my daughter comes to me and she says, Mom, I knocked over the cactus again and I broke the flower stem. And I had this massive reaction. I was like, you've got to be kidding. She's like, Mom, it's just a cactus. And I was like, yes, but every morning that thing gave me joy and happiness. And then I realized how invested my happiness is in the small things, in the flower on the cactus. And it took me a little bit of time, more time than I'd like to admit to you, to get over the broken flower. And I've stuck it in some soil, hoping that it'll regenerate itself and still actually flower, but that remains to be seen. But when we put our happiness in those small things, then we can find it, we can create it, we can grow it every single day. If we're chasing it, it's always going to be elusive because as we get it, it doesn't last. We need more, we need more, we need more. So are we creating happiness or are we really just chasing it? And that pursuit of happiness, that language that we use is actually really, really unhelpful. Liesl, at this time, anything in that chat box? Any questions, beautiful quotes, anything at all?
Trace, not that I can see here. I think you can continue. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the support. Okay, so let's have a look then. If we know that we have to create happiness and not chase it, what is this thing then? Happiness is simply a positive mood. It's just a positive mood. It's just off the baseline. It's off content. It's an elevated mood. That is what happiness is. It's not mystical. It's not complicated. It's actually really, really simple. It's positivity. Perhaps it's gratitude. It's a state of well-being. It usually comes from living a good life, whatever that looks like for you. And for me, it's going to be very different. It's one with a deep sense of meaning and a deep contentment. Okay, that's how Psychology Today define happiness. And I quite like that definition, especially the bit about meaning and deep contentment. And I'm going to talk more about why that is so important in a moment. But you can see that it's simply a positive mood. It's a state of well-being. It's about a good life, and it's about meaning and deep contentment. I'd like to ask you now, before I go into it on the slides, where do you think happiness comes from? What creates it? Is it your lifestyle? Is it your environment? Is it you? Like, where do you think, where's the magic? Where does it come from? If you want to go ahead and drop those answers in the chat box. What is it that you think determines how happy somebody is or perhaps isn't on any given moment? I'll give people a second to answer that. Liesl, any answers coming in?
Tracy, we have mindset here, we have lifestyle, positive mood, attitude.
Brilliant. Okay.
Self, balance between mind, body, and soul. That's a good one. States of mind. And they're coming in fast.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, let me speak to one or two of those before I show you the actual science, which is actually a little bit off-putting. But the ones that are talking about, positive frame of mind and mindset, those are really, really helpful insights because, like I was saying earlier, we can choose that in the morning, actually. Every morning before our brains are open when we first wake up and then they buffer themselves. So how we start our day actually sets the tone for the rest of the day. If I start the day on my cell phone, scrolling through garbage on social media or whatever else it is. I'm actually wiring my brain for distraction the whole day. I'm wiring my brain for novelty seeking, for dopamine hits. I'm going to struggle to be productive for the rest of the day. If I start my day rushing around like a mad thing, late, stressed, I'm wiring my day for that. I'm unlikely to actually come back from that, and I'll probably feel kind of harassed the whole day. But if I wake up in the morning and I have a happiness routine, which means watch your cactus flower while you have a shower, have a cup of tea or coffee or lemon juice or whatever it is that makes you happy in the morning, spend some time outside, be on time, have space, read something positive, which is definitely not the news or social media. It's a podcast. It's a whatever it is for you. You can actually set the tone for your whole day with starting out like that. What else you can do through the day is take the optimistic viewpoint. And you got to challenge yourself to do this all the time. What is the optimistic viewpoint? I'll be sitting at home at the end of a long, challenging day. My kids will be running around like lunatics, making a big fat noise. And I actually hate noise. It makes me a bit cray-cray in my head. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really not winning for me. I'm not loving this. And I really want to shout to them and say, stop it. But I also don't want them on their devices, so I don't want to stop the fun. So I get all this noise in my head. The optimistic viewpoint is to go, thankfully, I have kids that are healthy enough to run around and make a noise and be irritating. That's the optimistic viewpoint. If I'm sitting in traffic and it's not moving and I'm going to be late and I'm stressed, the optimistic viewpoint is I have a car. I'm not walking in the heat or the rain or the hail or whatever it might be. So there's always an optimistic viewpoint. When we take that viewpoint, we are generating contentment. We are generating happiness. It can be very hard to do that. I completely appreciate that. But that is why that mindset, as so many of you answered, is so important. Okay, let's have a look at where it actually comes from. And this is the research. This is the positive psychology researchers. This is what they say. This is where it comes from. And I always find this answer a little bit disheartening, actually. But nonetheless, this is what it is. So 50% of our natural levels of happiness actually come from our genetics, which is a bit disheartening because we can't change those genetics, but at least it's only 50%, not 51%. The rest comes from stuff that we control, and only 10% comes from our circumstances. And that's the bit that's really, really, really motivating. So you can't change your genetics. Those are what they are, right? My genetics control my height and they control whatever. That is what it is. I can't change that. I can no more change my eyes from blue to brown. So we'll leave that bit alone. But the stuff that we can control is big. And very often we focus on those circumstances. My boss is unreasonable, load shedding is driving me crazy, potholes are making me angry, whatever the circumstances are. And some of those circumstances are very real. Fully appreciate that. People have difficult lives and awful things happen and huge amounts of stress. But all of that is only responsible for 10% of our happiness. So you can have a perfect life on paper and be completely miserable because that only gives you 10%. The other 90% comes from somewhere else. That 40% is stuff that we can control. And that means doing things that make you happy as a part of your lifestyle. How often do we go, get up, rush, eat, commute, work, rush, fetch kids, tidy the house, pay the bills, watch garbage on TV, go to bed, get up, rush, commute, eat, work, go home, fetch the kids, like that? How often do we go, hang on a second, am I actually actively, consciously, deliberately building space into my lifestyle for things that make me happy, for fun, for joy? Am I taking responsibility for creating that? Because happiness and joy are a significant part of our well-being. So we have to carve out time to eat and sleep and exercise and all the other things that Kaelo talks to you about all the time. But we also have to talk about how we carve out space for happiness. Because joy and happiness are a fundamental part of well-being. When I get to be 100 years old, and it will be 100 because my granny died at 99 and 1/4 years old, and she was legendary and super competitive, as am I, and I'm determined to live a little bit longer than her, which will make me 100. So it will be 100. When I get to 100 and I look back, also it makes my maths really easy if it's a nice round number like that. If I look back, I want to look back and see, okay, I got to work on time every day, and I made a whole bunch of money, and my house is really clean and tidy. So that's great. Or do I want to look back and go, oh, I had fun here, and this person, we went here and we did that, and we tried this and we ate this and we did this and we experienced that. That's what we can control. That joy is in our control. We can generate that. And we throw up all these excuses. I don't have time. You do. We have time for everything we prioritize. I know that's hard, but it's also the truth. I don't have money. Yep, you and me both got none of it. But we don't have to have money to have fun. We can have fun in all kinds of free ways. Go throw a frisbee in a park somewhere. You can generate fun in ways that doesn't cost any money. I'm too fat. I'm too tired. I don't have this. I don't have that. There's 100 reasons why we can't generate fun, but none of them are actually really real. If we take responsibility for that 40%, you can improve your circumstances, your happiness quotient by 40%. That's huge. So I hope this gives some motivation around being able to change your current level of happiness. It does mean taking responsibility for challenging that mindset, finding the optimistic viewpoint, looking at that lifestyle and going, am I really generating opportunities for happiness here? Am I prioritizing that as a fundamental part of my wellness, or am I not? Okay, Lisa, anything in the chat box I need to pay attention to?
All good this side. Thank you, Trace. You can continue.
Thank you. Okay, just to break this down a little bit more and give it some more depth. There's actually 3 kinds of happiness: pleasure, passion, and purpose. And they're very different. And you'll see on this graph that they last for very, very different amounts of time, and they give us a different depth of happiness. So time along the bottom and kind of depth of happiness, sustainability of happiness going up on the side. So let's start with pleasure. The simplest and easiest way to get happy, and that's pleasure. Now, importantly, these are not better than or less than each other. We actually need all 3 of them, but some of them are more sustainable, more enriching than others. So pleasure is exactly that. Okay, I just love that phrase, rockstar happiness. So this comes from eating a great meal, experiencing something fun and new, hanging out with your mates, buying something that you've wanted for a long time, eating something that you love. You know, it's a moment in time that gives you pleasure. It might be something as simple as going outside and appreciating the sunshine, or a beautiful view, listening to a great piece of music. All of these things give us pleasure. And they're really important. It's really important. But it lasts for a very short time. It normally lasts for as long as the engagement with whatever the thing is. So I feel pleasure as long as I'm eating the chocolate, and maybe for a couple moments afterwards, and then it's gone. I'm feeling pleasure for as long as I'm enjoying the sunshine or my friend's company, but then they go home and I've got a mess to clean up. The pleasure is now finished. That pleasure is important, and we should have it every single day. Every single day. I hope that landed. We should have pleasure every single day. If you're not having pleasure every single day, you need to change your lifestyle or look for it in different places. But that pleasure is momentary. It's fleeting. If we're only chasing pleasure, we're going to get ourselves in trouble, because that's kind of leading into an addiction or leading into just chasing more and more and more and more. So if I eat more chocolate, or I make more money, or I buy more things, or I see my friends more. But what it's doing is it's giving you these little short-term hits. So I feel pleasure, I come down. I feel pleasure, I come down. I feel pleasure, I come down. It's great, but it's not sustainable. Okay. So we need pleasure every single day from a variety of different places, but accepting that it's going to just give us that little kick and then it's not really going to hold. If you're struggling with happiness, if you're feeling low for whatever reason, just because life is difficult at the moment or whatever's happening for you, pleasure is often a great way to kind of re-engage with this journey, to put things in that are pleasurable for you. You're almost kind of kick-starting it again for yourself and for your life. My kind of routine is that every Sunday night, I look at my diary for the week so that I can try and not mess things up, which is a big goal of mine, is to not forget about things and mess them up. So on Sunday night, I try and kind of have a view of the week. But in that process, one of the things that I do is I go, do I have something to look forward to this week? And I do the same thing this month. So I try and make sure that my family, in that case, that's my experience, but we're all different. In that month, we have something different, new, exciting to go, to do, to experience, whatever it might be. And every week, I want to make sure that I have something that is going to give me pleasure. And that might be an outing, it might be going to see something or see someone or cook a new meal. It doesn't matter what it is. It's different for all of us. But is it in there? Is it scripted? For me, once a month and once a week, the way I'm managing it in my head, and then making sure every day that there's moments when I drive home, am I appreciating the change in seasons? Am I listening to great music? Those things are bringing pleasure. So in the small things and also in the slightly bigger plan. I hope that made sense. I feel like I said it quite clumsily. So do you have pleasure in your life? Then we have our next layer, which is passion. Now, passion, you can see, lasts significantly longer than pleasure. And it is a more enriching sense, a more enriching experience of happiness. So passion comes from flow, from engagement. And passion often comes from the things that you love, that are important to you. Hopefully, that might be work. For me, it's work. I'm one of those, the blessed people that love my job, not every aspect of it. I don't like the admin and the note keeping and the endless tasks that come with that. I hate every second of it. But besides that, I love everything else. So for me, work goes into passion. For other people, maybe it's hobbies. Maybe it's cycling or swimming or running. Maybe it's charity work. It's, working for animal shelters. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's learning things or traveling, whatever it is for people, right? And you probably got a couple. So if I think about what are my passions, I love to be outdoors, my work, my family, traveling. These are things that I am passionate about. So when I am doing those things, I can do them endlessly. And that's flow. So flow means you're into something and you're probably good at it, but it's a little bit challenging for you, but you lose yourself in it. You kind of lose track of time. These are the things that when you're Googling them, you start Googling at 9 o'clock at night, and next thing you look up and it's 2 a.m, and you've read about restoring old cars for 6 hours and you haven't even realized. So that's passion, that's flow. You lose track of time because it's not a chore. It's not arduous. It's bringing you happiness. That's passion. Now we have to have passion in our lives as well. We have to have all three of these. What are you passionate about? And it's easy to lose these things for whatever reason. You get ill, it takes a long time to recover. You have kids and your lifestyle gets blown up. You get divorced, you get married, you have a bereavement, you move jobs, you move countries, or whatever reason. It's easy for you to kind of lose these passions or stop engaging with them for whatever reason. If you're looking at your life, well, we sit here now and go, okay, so my passions are gone because, well, for whatever reason, and those same justifications will come. I don't have time, I don't have money, I don't have this, I don't have that. I get it. I say the same thing. But then I have to go in my head, I've got time and resource for everything that I prioritize. That's the bottom line truth. I have to hold myself accountable to that. But passion, we've got to put back in. What are you passionate about? I'd love in that chat box, before I carry on, to just see what gives people pleasure. What is it in that chat box? And why I want to see it is because I want to steal some of it so that I can also try and get a moment of pleasure from whatever it is that you guys are finding pleasurable. So please go ahead in that chat box and just drop there. What brings you pleasure? Is it awesome music? Is it a great view? Is it a fantastic meal? Is it friends? Is it hobbies? Is it, cactuses that are flowering once in 10 years? Like, what is it that brings you pleasure? Often when we see what other people see, then we have more opportunities to engage with those things, and we can go, okay, I can build that into my life too. I can get pleasure from those things too. And then similarly in that chat box, please let us know, what are you passionate about? What is it that you're passionate about? And is it in your life? I'd really like to know, do you guys have your passions currently in your life, or have we lost them because life is challenging and is a constant juggle? Liesl, anybody talking to me there in the chat box?
They are, Trace. So we have cooking for family and friends. We have another person that says theatre is a big passion. Peppermint crisp tart. Watching my son sing.
Pleasure. It's not a passion. Or maybe it's a passion.
Baking, dot art. We have another shows in theatre. Going for a hike, when people laugh and enjoy good vibes. We have physical fitness and lifestyle chat. We have chatting up women there. We have, sure, they're coming in quickly. We have shopping, and then I'm going to read the last one out to you, and visiting family.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you'll see there that many of those can be both pleasures and passions. So cooking a peppermint crisp tart might be a passion to, cook for family, bake for family, and eating it and enjoying it with those people is a pleasure. So many of those things you described can be both pleasure and passion, or one of the other in any different time. So please keep those coming in. We love to hear what those things are. If I move on to the last one there, the big green one at the top, purpose. Now, this is perhaps the most important of all of them. This is the Holy Grail. And if any of you have heard me present on pretty much any other topic attached to wellness, you're going to hear me talk about purpose, meaning and purpose. We know that it has a fundamental and profound impact on our well-being and on our happiness if we have meaning and purpose. We know that research was done decades ago by a brilliant psychologist called Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian Jew in the concentration camps in the Second World War. He was in Auschwitz, and he did a whole lot of research around why some people were able to physically survive the conditions and some people were not. And that obviously isn't accounting for those that actively lost their lives because of the actions of others, but it's for people who just managed to survive the conditions. And what he found is that, and you'll see this across so many different environments, and what Viktor Frankl found and is published on and has been accepted as an entire school of psychology, is that if you have purpose, you can survive. You can physically survive, barring radical events, obviously. But you can physically survive. If you have meaning and purpose, it gets you out of bed in the morning. And we know this. How many times have you been sick, tired, and gotten up because you had a job you were committed to, or kids you had to look after, or whatever, or you had to train for an Ironman? You got up because it gave you purpose. It gave you meaning. And without that, it's a bit like kind of floating around the ocean on a giant ship with no real destination. It's like, this is great and the views are awesome, but kind of what am I doing here? Just kind of floating around in circles. The purpose and the meaning give you direction. They give you motivation, that they course correct. It makes you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And that purpose may change across your lifetime. What it is when you're 18 and what it is when you're 25 or 35 or 45 or 65 or 85 is going to be very different. But what is your purpose? And you're probably going to have space for two or three. If I think about my life, I have three very clearly defined purposes. My professional purpose every day, and I try very hard, not always get it right, but I try very hard to, when I get up in the morning and start to engage with my day, go today, just make a difference in one person's life, just one. I might encounter a day like today, I'm doing a number of these, I might encounter a couple thousand people. Maybe if I'm just doing therapy, it might be 10 people, might be 5 people, but maybe just one person will be better off today than they were yesterday. That's a purpose for me. Every day I ground myself in that. In a more personal space, for me, it's about traveling and learning. I have the worst kind of FOMO, and I have to see and do and be part of everything. So my purpose is, my meaning is to travel to as many places as I possibly can and learn as much as I can and have as many different life experiences as humanly possible. That's a meaning for me. I'm like a magpie for life experience. And then the last one is to have a family and to raise kids in a way that makes us all happy. So when I'm old and grey and wrinkly and celebrating my 100th birthday, my grandkids are there visiting me and they haven't flown away because I'm an unpleasant granny. Those are my purposes. And there's only space for 3. There ain't space for any more. And they compete. But we have to have them, because they give us motivation, they course correct us, they hold us on target, and they make us happy. If there's no point, if there's no why, what are we doing? If I get up every morning and I grind out another day with no why, well, that's just stress and rushing and exhaustion and hard work for what? For nothing? So that I can grow old and have a retirement, or what? When there's meaning and purpose, then it becomes worth it. And meaning and purpose give us the highest intensity of happiness, and it lasts for the longest time. Meaning and purpose can last decades. It can make us feel happy and content for decades, for a lifetime. And when we look back on our lives, and make no mistake, the final phase of human development is to look back on your life and review it. So I keep saying when I'm 100, and I'm making a bit of a joke of that, but actually it's 100% true. When we know that our lives are ending, whether we have seconds, minutes, or months of awareness that our lives are ending, we will review our life. And when we look back, are we going to be happy with what we did with our time? Because that's all we have. We have time. We have 100 years. What are we going to do with that time? And that's purpose and that's meaning. And when you look back, when you're turning 100 years old and there's pink and blue balloons everywhere, are you going to look back and go, I'm okay with that? I achieved some meaning and purpose for me, whatever that is. I'm okay with that. That's the final phase of human development. And it's profound. And the scary part of that is that you don't have a do-over. In that moment, time is up. And you can't course correct anymore. So building these things into your life now is what's important. And I would encourage you to listen to people, who speak so eloquently on this. There's a book written by a palliative care nurse called 5 Regrets of the Dying. It's only about this big. It'll take you 3 minutes to read it. Read it. It gives great perspective on this life review and what is it that we regret. Because those are the things that have stopped us from being happy. If we engage with people who've understood this, we can start to understand it better ourselves. Read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It really helps to understand, why meaning is so important and perhaps how we find it as well. And a simple Google search will give you enough insight as well. You don't even have to read the whole book. My challenge to you is to build a table that looks a bit like this for yourself and write down in these 3 columns and start now in the chat box. In that chat box, let us know what brings you purpose. What is your purpose? What is your why? What is your why? What brings you pleasure? What brings you passion? What gives you purpose? Write this down. So when it's a Sunday night and you're thinking, oh, here we go again, go, hang on a second. I remember I need pleasure, passion, and purpose. Let me look at my week. Maybe a week is too much. Let me look at my day, your month, your quarter, whatever works for you. Where's the pleasure? Where's the passion? Where's the purpose? If it's not there, get it in. Write a list. These are the things that bring me pleasure, because we forget. This is what I'm passionate about, and this is my purpose. When someone like me says to you, what's your purpose? You should be able to answer me and go, my purpose is this. This is why I get up in the morning. This is what makes me keep going when it's hard. In terms of pleasure, we forget. I have a running list on my phone of all the cool things that I see on social media, or someone tells me about it, or I see an advert and I go, oh, that'll be fun. I like that. Remember, I'm a magpie for life experience. So of course I have a list, but I have a list of all these cool things. And then when I'm feeling like, well, which is normally a Sunday afternoon, then I go, hang on, let's look at the list. And I look at the list, and even the list makes me happy because I'm in my passion, which is doing things and exploring. So then the list is already giving me pleasure. And then I book something. I phone a friend and I say, let's go here. Or I buy a ticket to something, or I organize a picnic, or whatever it is. I put something in so that I know that on Friday afternoon or Sunday or whenever it is, there's that thing. So run a list, have things written down, because when you're in that kind of funky mood, it's difficult to remember. So I hope that you give yourself three working lists in whatever format works for you. Is there anything coming in there? Liesel's busy with her list, maybe?
Trace, can you hear?
I can hear you now.
There's no questions coming in this side.
Brilliant, thank you. Hopefully people will start sharing what their purpose is as well. What is your purpose? It's great. I find it so motivating to see what other people find motivating. I'll come back and ask you that in a moment. Okay, what blocks our happiness? What gets in the way of us being happy? Putting it all on certain milestones. Like I said right at the beginning, when I make this amount of money, when I lose this weight, when I get married, when I get divorced, when I have a kid, when I change jobs and I get promoted, whatever it is, when I believe a certain milestone is going to make me happy. That milestone is going to give you joy, 100%, but it's not going to give you that absolute fulfillment. It's going to give you pleasure, which is great. And you should have those targets, and you should achieve those things, and you should have that pleasure, but it's not going to give you that sustainable happiness. Thinking money will make you happy. Money tends to just buy you a more complicated set of problems that you can hide better and just make worse. Tends to be my experience of people with lots of money. It'll give you access to experiences, sure. It'll give you access to nice things. Will it ultimately make you happy? No, it won't. Clutter. And this is such a big one. When we talk about, sort of routes to happiness and things that get in the way and a happiness lifestyle, we know that clutter causes anxiety. It's very difficult for a human being to be happy in mess because it's creating anxiety for us. Ideally, we're in quite a kind of zen environment where things have a home and you're able to find your stapler or pick up your pen or find the tax bill or whatever it is and not have to hunt and scratch. Hunting and scratching creates stress. Mess creates anxiety. So actually clutter in our heads, things that aren't resolved, our to-do lists, in our cell phones, in our email inboxes, on our desks, in our cars. There's lots of places where there's clutter. It isn't just, our homes. All of those places ideally should be clear. And if that's a lifestyle, it obviously gets easier to maintain. My personal rule, which again I don't get perfect all the time, but I certainly try, is every time I go into a space, I put 3 things away. That space might include my phone or my inbox. So if I go into my inbox, I delete 3 things, or I unsubscribe from 3, newsletters that somehow I got onto the list for, I don't know how. I unsubscribe, or I delete 3 things, or I put 3 things away in the kitchen, or whatever it is. When you go into a space, I put 3 things away. And that tends to help keep things manageable. Not perfect, but manageable. At least you feel good about it. That pursuit of pleasure, also really unhelpful. We spoke about that earlier in terms of chasing it. You can't chase it. You got to create it. You got to stop and build it. You can't chase it. Chasing it is just more. All you're going to do is get addicted. Short-term hit, short-term hit, short-term hit. You're not going to create sustainable happiness. Focusing on stuff, not experiences. And there's been so much research on this in particular recently, or the last decade or so. Stuff doesn't make us happy at all. It gives us pleasure for a moment. I got some awesome new shoes. Yay, I feel happy. That lasts for 10 minutes. Stuff does not make us happy. Experiences do, because they give us memories that we can revisit. They build connections with human beings that make us happy. They contribute to our passions often and or to our meaning and purpose. So experiences generate far more lasting happiness than stuff. Comparisons are absolutely deadly, and it's one of the big problems with social media, and especially the social media for kids, but also for adults. You know, we keep saying images on social platforms are bad for kids, but I have the same problem. When I look at my friends looking all thin and gorgeous in their new houses that are beautiful and clean and tidy, or they're on holiday somewhere exotic, I feel sad for myself, or I feel not good enough, or less than, or why haven't I achieved that, or why didn't I lose the baby weight, or why didn't I, like, we make those comparisons, and that makes us unhappy. So we keep saying it's about kids, but it's not only about kids. They might be slightly more vulnerable than adults, but we're vulnerable too. And those comparisons are radically unhelpful. Social media, in fact, as an entity, is unhelpful to our happiness. In fact, smartphones are unhelpful to our happiness. They give us a pseudo connection to the world, which is not real. Real connections to real people give us happiness, not devices. They give us access to short-term pleasure, which is dopamine hits when someone likes your photograph, or online shopping, or whatever it is, short-term hits, but no sustainable happiness. They give us access to this fake universe, which we then compare our real lives to. It's never going to measure up. And you can tell yourself in your head 1,000 times that I know this photograph is edited and filtered and all the rest of it, but that's not what your heart receives. So your brain might appreciate that, but your eyes still receive the actual image. And those comparisons are going to be there. Another block is focusing on the past or the future. And this is sometimes one that we need help with. And I would really encourage you, if you're struggling with this, to reach out for that help. If we're focusing on the past, we can get stuck there easily on the old traumas and the old loss and the old grief and all of those things. And it's easy to get stuck there. Those things are difficult and real and important. But we need to resolve them. We need to grieve and shout and be angry and cry. And we need to be able to box them eventually and leave them there. And if you're sitting with things in your past that are affecting your present, please reach out and get the help you need to resolve those. If the future is overwhelming and you're so anxious about tomorrow, you're missing what's happening right now. You're missing the sunshine and the change in seasons and the flowers and the music and the food and the friends. You're missing it all because your head is in tomorrow. I can't change tomorrow. I can't influence that, and I can't change yesterday either, but I can be present today. I can make the best of today. That I can do. And I had a supervisor once, 105 years ago, who said to me, Trace, if you try and change the world, I was a 22-year-old social worker, thought I was going to, revolutionize mental health. It didn't happen. But anyway, I tried. What she said to me was, focus on the square meter directly in front of you, and that's it. If it isn't in that square meter, it doesn't count. And that saved my career and my own mental health 1,000 times by now, maybe 100,000 times by now. But that's where it's at. Focus on the square meter directly in front of you. Today. Happiness is here today. It wasn't yesterday and it's not tomorrow. Focus on the square meter in front of you. If it isn't in that square meter, it doesn't count. Because otherwise we miss what's right in front of us. And being unkind, there's been, again, so much research recently around the impact of kindness. not on the person receiving the kindness, but on the person giving the kindness. Obviously, the person receiving the kindness feels amazing, but the person giving the kindness generates their own happiness. And if you are having a really bad day, smile, because it's contagious. People smile back at you. It's why COVID was so difficult. One of the many reasons, because we couldn't see each other smile. Smile and be kind. Force yourself to be kind, because it will elevate your mood. And that might be buying a cool drink for the car guard when it's 40 degrees outside. That act of kindness, he will smile back, he'll say thank you, he'll express gratitude. You will feel better, you will feel a moment of happiness, and that can change your entire engagement with the day. So be kind. It's good for you. It creates happiness for you. Okay, I take it we're all still together. What makes us happy then? Anything in the chat box, Liesel, that I need to look at? Okay. I have a small delay, but I'll come back to that. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Let's quickly read out some purposes here. My children, we have being part of a team, even as an individual. Another beautiful one saying my purpose, bringing heaven home and to empower homes around me to do the same. Being the best version of myself, for my husband, kids, and more importantly, for me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Liesel. Okay, so what makes us happy? And we've probably just discussed this, so I'm not going to go through it blow by blow, but just to really, sum it up, what makes us happy? The small pleasures every day, getting absorbed in challenging tasks that put you in flow, meeting your goals, being connected to other human beings, having a purpose that exists beyond yourself, living with that purpose, building lasting relationships. So we know as well that having 3 friends that you've been with forever is far more impactful than having 100 friends that you had for 10 minutes. So lasting relationships. We also know that it's the people immediately around us, like not more than 5, that actually make us happy. The rest give us moments of joy. But it's the lasting relationships in our immediate circle. Those are the ones that count. And then focusing on experiences, not on material goods. Stuff has never made us happy. It never will, but experiences do, because they create memories that we can revisit. If we look at happy people, we know that they're open to learning new things. They're not closed. They're not isolated. They smile, like I was saying. They go with the flow. They practice kindness and compassion. They use gratitude. They look for the optimistic viewpoint. They have healthy relationships. They're happy for other people. They celebrate other people's victories. They're not spiteful. They don't hold grudges. They let go of yesterday and don't worry about tomorrow. They play. They enjoy. They're not a victim. They're not stingy with their own happiness. So when you look at a happy person, this is some of what they are doing, and we can just as well learn to replicate that as well. So the root to happiness, living in accordance with your own values and making it a habit. So what are the actions that you can take today out of this conversation? What can you do? What can you build into your routine to make happiness a habit? Put yourself first. Prioritize that time. Take the optimistic viewpoint. Write a gratitude list every day. Live authentically in line with your meaning and purpose. Okay. Practice compassion and generosity. Focus on those close relationships. Find your flow and use your strengths. This is not mystical, like I said right at the beginning. It's practice. It's routine. We are responsible for 40% of this. We can do this. We can generate happiness if we allow ourselves to make it a priority. Thank you so much for your time and attention and your engagement and your beautiful insights and sharing your secrets to happiness. It's much appreciated. I hope that this starts a conversation for yourself. Maybe you'll continue that conversation with those around you. Thank you for being with me today and for your time and attention. Happy to stay on the line if there are any questions, Liesel. Otherwise, go well, be safe, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Yeah, from our side, thank you all for joining us for this webinar this afternoon. Tracy, like it was very insightful for me personally. I know there's a lot of things that I'm going to take home with me. And I just want to leave you with a quote that hit me quite hard to say, and it says, it's a quote from James Oppenheim. It says, "The foolish man seeks happiness in the distance. The wise grows it under his feet." And it reminds me of, that habit that we have to teach ourselves every single day on how do we apply positive psychology in the way that we live our daily lives. It's not just a once-off, right? It's a constant practice, a constant awareness. So my heart's desire for every single person on this call is that you would find your own happiness, create your own happiness. Take care, and then we'll see you in our April webinar again. Thank you once again, Tracy, for your time.
Thank you for your help, Liesl. Take care.